London, 1888. Famed Russian mystic and philosopher Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky publishes her seminal book, The Secret Doctrine. In it, she offers detailed descriptions of the legendary lost continents of Atlantis and Lemuria. She claims not only that these ancient civilizations existed, but that they possessed highly advanced technology, including flying machines, thousands of years ago.
Madame Blavatsky maintained that human lineage is vastly older than we understand, and that primordial civilizations like Atlantis or Lemuria formed the foundation of human history and were much older than Egyptian culture, than Vedic culture, than any culture known to humanity. This to her was an occult history that humankind had forgotten about, had failed to understand.
Atlantis, we know, goes back to Plato. He's the first one to really talk about it. And both Atlantis and Lemuria, at some point, they sort of turned dark. They became fascinated with a kind of form of black magic and a kind of hyper technology, and this led to their demise.
Madame Blavatsky claimed she received this knowledge from a mysterious entity she described as a Mahatma, a Sanskrit word that means great soul. He called himself Kuthumi and resided in Tibet.
Kuthumi communicated with her telepathically. In other words, she kind of channeled him.
The way she described him is almost like a eternal Baba, eternal soul. So, he's like immortal.
Also, he was able to manifest himself in her apartment in New York City, even though it was thousands of miles away.
We have to question what was going on here. Was she somehow in contact with some kind of hidden world in the Himalayas?
In 1875, Madame Blavatsky founded the Theosophical Society. It was made up of prominent thinkers who sought to explore Eastern religions and the occult and create a kind of universal brotherhood based on the teachings of Kuthumi and other Mahatmas.
Theosophy means the wisdom of the gods. The Theosophical Society was incredibly successful and popular and influential, not only in the occult world, but she was also influential in the cultural world. People like the painter Mondrian and Vasily Kandinsky were early theosophists. L. Frank Baum, who wrote the Oz books, Abner Doubleday, who invented baseball, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. These were all very early members of the Theosophical Society.
While many important figures joined the Theosophical Society, Madame Blavatsky had a particularly profound influence on a young Indian law student who came to visit her in London, Mohandas Gandhi.
Gandhi wrote about this as one of the pivotal encounters of his life. He maintained that Madame Blavatsky gave him the first sense of universal brotherhood that later came to form the core of his philosophy, not only of radical equality, but of radical nonviolence.
Now, this is quite astonishing when we think about the potential here that perhaps an entity, this strange Tibetan entity that's making psychical contact with Blavatsky, has now reached out to someone who would go on to be one of the most famous persons in history and would have made this radical change in India that would really shock the world and change the face of the British Empire.
Was Gandhi's transformative leadership and Indian independence, in part, a result of influence from these mysterious enlightened masters in Tibet? And if so, who were these so-called Mahatmas? Ancient astronaut theorists believe the answer can be found by examining an encounter with a similar entity. New York City, 1918. British occultist and writer Aleister Crowley engages in a magic ritual he calls the Amalantra working. He claims the ritual opens an interdimensional portal, allowing him to interact with an otherworldly being.
Aleister Crowley is probably the most famous, or rather infamous, magician of the 20th century. And Crowley took it upon himself to revive the ancient black arts, the dark arts, as it were. He was contacting lots of different beings from other dimensions. But there was also a vision Crowley had of this individual, this entity that he called Lam.
According to Crowley, this entity claimed to reside high in the mountains of Tibet, just like the Mahatma that Madame Blavatsky said she encountered.
Lam claimed to be a Tibetan master of wisdom, somewhat in the footsteps of some of the figures that Madame Blavatsky had been in touch with, and he was a kind of mystical or otherworldly adept in his own description, according to Crowley.
Aleister Crowley drew a sketch of this creature, and if you look at this sketch, one thing that hits you very forcibly, in fact startlingly, is the fact that this looks like a grey alien.
More than 70% of alleged alien abductees describe encountering what have become known as the Greys, or Grey aliens. Is it possible that there is a connection between these beings and the Tibetan masters that both Aleister Crowley and Madame Blavatsky claimed to have contacted? And if so, does this suggest that there is a hidden extraterrestrial realm within Tibet? Some ancient astronaut theorists believe that physical proof of an alien presence in Tibet was uncovered more than 80 years ago by Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Coming up,
The idea is that the statue has some kind of mystical, esoteric, or magical properties.
They would also be able to control the destiny of humanity.
Firm nearest you at Purple Dot.
And Marty are teaming up in Italy to investigate the Neurologic civilization.
How was this planned?
That's very hard.
Teesta River Valley, India, May 1938. Roughly 1 year before the start of the Second World War, German explorer and zoologist Ernst Schaefer leads a Nazi-funded expedition into Tibet. Schaefer's official objective for the expedition was the creation of a complete scientific record of Tibet, but unofficially, he was given another directive: finding the hidden kingdom of Shambhala.
The Nazis took an incredible interest in looking for that entrance to Shambhala. The Nazis were almost certainly influenced by the works of Madame Blavatsky, because she said if somebody could find access into Shambhala, they would also be able to control the destiny of humanity and the world as a whole.
While they were there, the war broke out in 1939, so they were called back. So they didn't really return with any positive proof about what they were looking for, but the story is they did come back with this statue.
Among the items Schaefer brought back to Germany was a mysterious 22-pound iron statue of what was presumed to be a Buddhist deity. The figure had a swastika on its clothing, a symbol of divinity that predated the Nazis by thousands of years.
One of their discoveries was a little 9-inch statue of a being wearing a swastika on his chest, which certainly would have got the attention of the Nazis, having adopted the swastika as their symbol, although they put it into its counterclockwise form. The swastika was originally a Tibetan symbol for prosperity and for good luck.
Could the Iron Man statue depict one of the powerful Mahatmas described by Madame Blavatsky? Was it perhaps a sign that the Nazi expedition was close to finding Shambhala? While most researchers have been preoccupied with determining what the statue is meant to depict, 80 years after its discovery, a scientific study uncovered an even more intriguing aspect of the Iron Man. Stuttgart University, 2012. A team of German geologists that have performed a new examination of the Iron Man statue published their analysis in the scientific journal Meteorics and Planetary Science. They estimate the figure was created in the 11th century and have found that it was not made of earthly iron, but was carved from the Chinga meteorite.
It turns out this thing is made from one of the rarest meteorites in human history that fell to Earth over Tibet around 15,000 years ago. It's the most unusual and hardest meteorite ever discovered. The ancient Tibetans who carved this into a statue clearly suspected that this thing had great power.
The Tibetans themselves seem to realize that this was special. And you have to wonder, is this meteorite, was it perhaps part of a spaceship? Something that had crashed there in Tibet, and the Chinga meteorite is all that's left of it?
Is it possible that the Iron Man statue was made from part of an alien craft that crash-landed on Earth thousands of years ago? Could it be a remnant of an event that marked the arrival of otherworldly visitors and the beginning of the legend of Shambhala? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and suggest that the reason this alien realm remains so elusive can be found by examining stories of a Tibetan monster known as the Yeti. Coming up.
Were they murdered by, being hammered on their head and then thrown into this lake?
Going to the Everglades Triangle.
Mount Makalu, Nepal, April 29th, 2019. Just a few miles south of the Tibetan border, the Indian Army reports the discovery of enormous footprints in the snow, measuring an astounding 32 inches long by 15 inches wide. They identified the footprints as having been made by the legendary monster known as the Yeti.
The Yeti is some kind of a Himalayan monster that looked like a man, that looked like an ape. This is a composite figure. Local people, they have seen it in the snow, in the mountains.
Tales of the Yeti stretch back to pre-Buddhist Tibet, where the shamanic mystics of the Bon religion told of wild men that guarded a hidden place of power and perfection called Omolungring, known in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition as Shambhala.
The Yeti have this reputation of being extremely violent and aggressive towards humans. And one explanation for this is because they're considered to be the guardians of Shambhala, keeping away all those that are not pure of heart from entering into this holiest of holy places.
When the early British expeditions went through India into Tibet, they would stop at Tibetan monasteries on their way to Mount Everest, and they would be told about Yetis, and that Yetis were guardians of the entrances to Shambhala.
Monsters guarding the entrances to the land of the gods? Well, it may sound like the stuff of legend. Ancient astronaut theorists suggest there is disturbing evidence that may prove such stories are, in fact, very real. Uttarakhand, India. 16,000 feet high in the Himalayas, just 40 miles from the Tibetan border, lies Rupkund Lake. While it has become a popular tourist destination, those who approach this small picturesque body of water are confronted with a chilling sight, because Rupkund Lake is littered with the remains of over 600 human bodies. For decades, scientists assumed that the dead had fallen victim to a single massive catastrophe. But in 2019, DNA sampling revealed that the bodies contained in what has been dubbed Skeleton Lake did not all die at once, but at different points in time over a period of at least 1,000 years.
Some of the skeletons had what they said were unhealed compression fractures on the head. Were they murdered by being hammered on the head and then thrown into this lake? So researchers were baffled by this whole thing, and the more information that came out of this lake, the stranger it became.
Recently, Indian scientists have performed DNA testing on those bones in the Rupkunda. They have found many South Asians and some East Asians, meaning Chinese and Koreans, and of course some from the West, for example, Mediterranean region. So that is really intriguing, how these people wound up there. That's baffling.
What could have drawn people from all over the world to make the treacherous journey to this very small and remote mountain lake? And not just at a single point in time, but continuously for hundreds of years.
Rupkund Lake is on the Pilgrim's Trail to Mount Kailash, which is one of the central geographic sites in Hindu and Tibetan and Buddhist religion. These people at different times could have been on the pilgrimage path.
If the Yeti is considered to be the guardian of Shambhala, and if Shambhala is Kailash, then it makes perfect sense why the Yeti is somehow taking these people, killing them, harming them, and throwing them in Skeleton Lake.
Could the bones found at Skeleton Lake belong to pilgrims who were seeking Shambhala and fell victim to the Yeti? Although there have been numerous reported sightings of Yetis in Tibet, no reliable physical proof of their existence has been successfully retrieved. In fact, these mysterious beings are often reported as simply vanishing into thin air.
In 1951, the world-famous mountaineer Eric Shipton was on his way to Mount Everest. He's at 19,000 feet. And all of a sudden, he sees these giant footprints in the snow. And he follows them for over a mile until they disappear into the glacier. The Yeti could, in fact, be an interdimensional creature, capable of either cloaking itself or disappearing into other realms.
Perhaps they are not physical biological beings, but are some sort of interdimensional class of entities which is able to appear and disappear at will, and manifest themselves at will to stop those who are not supposed to enter certain areas.
Is it possible that both the Yeti and the kingdom of Shambhala that it is said to protect are not only extraterrestrial, but also interdimensional? Might this explain why they remain so elusive?
Some modern researchers, people like Jacques Vallée, John Keel, amongst others, have drawn the conclusion that maybe we're not really dealing with extraterrestrials from outer space, but ultra-terrestrials who are coming from parallel space. That's exactly what masters of mysticism and experiences of the prophetic traditions have been saying for thousands of years.
If a gateway leading into another dimension exists somewhere in Tibet, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest, could it be a site where extraterrestrials, or perhaps ultra-terrestrials, are entering our world? And might it also be possible for us to enter theirs? Ancient astronaut theorists believe that the key to accessing this cosmic paradise may not lie in traveling to a secret location in Tibet, but in mastering an ancient technique of the mind.
I believe that anything is humanly possible that a lot of people think is impossible. And the reason why that I believe that is because the Holy Father the creator of this universe, created what we can visually, tangibly see, smell, taste, hear, and be a part of. The inner reactions of what we as a Homo sapien race can experience or make compasses most understanding of any other animal that has been created upon this planet. But spiritually, supernaturally speaking, there is no end towards what can be created or how that it can be manifested. I believe that there is thousands of eyes upon to each individual of what they say, do, hear, what they talk about, because the Bible says that we will be judged by every utter word that we speak. How is God going to judge us for what we do and what we don't do that we should do if somebody isn't documenting everything that we do? In other words, if we could see into the spirit world, we would see all kinds of different beings, all kinds of different angels, all kinds of different spirits. And I believe that the Eddy can manufacture itself and dismanufacture itself and become invisible at any given moment, depending upon location and depending upon the faith of people believing in the Eddy, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. There's been tales that the place that I spent so much time in, pertaining to Land Between the Lakes, that people have seen and heard loud screams and have seen images of things that they can't explain. I've never interpreted anything like that in my stay up at Land Between the Lakes. I have interpreted some weird things pertaining to wolves, snakes standing up on their tail, and hearing sounds that I couldn't very well describe. But I've been in Casadena, Florida, and heard things that I couldn't describe. Whenever you're dealing with the supernatural, it can manifest itself, according to the Bible, even as an angel of light, and would be able to deceive the very elect if it was possible. These invisible entities have become more powerful and more wittier today than what they ever was. And because of it, they do have capabilities looking through the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th dimension, different realms. They do have capabilities of manifesting themselves at any given time. But it's not just the Big Eddy that they can manifest themselves as. They can manifest themselves as a human being, as a female. They can manifest themselves as a angel. They can manifest themselves as a big cat or whatever. Because these spiritual entities are real, but we as a human race still has that doubt, still has that unbelief, and because of it, we have not fully bonded with the supernatural. Thanks for listening. Good luck to all of us as we endure in these moments of uncertainty.